Welcome to TubbTalk, the podcast for managed service providers. I was just saying, just before we came on air, we're at Dattoncon. I've interviewed the great and the good in the industry, and you're a notable name missing off that list. So it's good to have you on the show at last.
Well, I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for having me on. I don't know if I would call myself great, but I'm very happy to be here.
Let's get straight down to business. So I'm a huge believer in the power of documentation for MSPs. Former MSP owner, and a great deal of the success I put to it is that I got the stuff out of my head down into systems and processes. So for anyone unfamiliar with IT Glue, how would you describe the system that you've got there for MSPs?
Yeah, so IT Glue is a documentation tool purpose-built for IT. What we do is bring standard operating procedures, unstructured documentation, along with hardware and structured asset information and passwords together into a single tool. Because what we find is very often these three different types of information are used together, but they're typically stored in separate solutions. Very often, traditionally, you have your SOPs in something like a SharePoint or a wiki or something like that, very unstructured tools. And then you have your asset information in a very structured tool. In our community, in the MSP space, that's very often a PSA tool. But traditionally, it could also be things like a spreadsheet or somewhere like that. And then you've got your passwords stored in a password manager or a spreadsheet or something like that. And then so technicians are having to go search all these different places to find this information. And when they fail, then they end up shoulder tapping somebody and distracting them. And that's really what we want to solve, is that shoulder tapping. We don't want people to have to do that. And then we layer in a lot of automation to make it easy to create the documentation and to maintain all that asset information, because it changes regularly. And we can leverage integrations now to be able to automate as much of that as we can.
So I'm old enough to remember when IT Glue came to market in the first place. And I remember I'd sold my MSP business by that point. I was thinking, man, I wish this was around when I was running an MSP for all the reasons that you mentioned. We used to use SharePoint and Word documents, all these different things there. So you've been in the business for quite some time in different roles, haven't you?
That's
so
right.
Your current role is General Manager, IT Glue, but your role in the business has really evolved over the past few years. So tell us a little bit about the journey from DevOps, engineering, Chief Technology Officer, all those things that you've done up until now.
Yeah, so I joined the organization to help build out the engineering org. So when I came on board, the first version of IT Glue had been built by contractors, and we had just started selling it. There was some good traction, and Chris Day, the founder of IT Glue, had decided, okay, he's going to go all in. He's ready to build out an engineering team, so we need to bring engineering in-house, obviously. So I was the first full-time engineering hire for IT Glue.
Wow.
And my specialization had always been DevOps. That's what I had been doing for several years before joining IT Glue. So that was one of the first things I did, is I took over our infrastructure, automated everything, and built all of our management system to help us to be able to scale. And during that time, I also grew out the engineering org. So I hired the next handful of engineers and built out the team. And eventually my title changed to director and VP and then CTO of IT Glue. Over that time, my role was fundamentally the same. I was building out that engineering org. And as we continued to scale, my title evolved with it. And then after the acquisition by Kaseya, I was asked to take over the product management of the business. So product management is responsible for making sure that the tool has the capability it needs, right? Being connected with our customers, understanding the market, and knowing what we need to be building. How do we structure and manage our roadmap to make sure that we're delivering the maximum value to our customers? So I took over as general manager at that point. And then later on, I started to take on more and more modules of IT Complete. So now I'm the general manager and CTO for what we call the MSP and IT operations product or suite of products at Kaseya. So that's all of our tools aimed at making IT operations more efficient as opposed to service delivery. Service delivery is things like RMM, security, backup, things you use directly for your customers, whereas IT operations is all the things that are used internally. So that's PSA, it's IT Glue, it's accounts receivable automation, QBR tools, everything kind of in that realm falls under my purview.
Yeah, and how has life changed for you, good and bad? You were there pre-acquisition, so I remember IT Glue was born out of like an MSP needing that documentation in place, and that's where the tool came from. So there must be some sort of things you missed from those scrappy sort of startup days, but then other things that you're like, I'm glad we've got the power of such a big organization behind us. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, it's very different, obviously, right? When I joined IT Glue, we had 8 employees.
Yeah.
We had this terrible little office in downtown Vancouver that, it was dark and dingy, and we had these little tiny desks and very uncomfortable chairs, but there were 8 of us just scrapping it out, right? And it's fun and exciting, and you're friends with everybody that you work with, right? You have to be, because you spend so much time with them, you know them inside and out. That's a fun environment to be in. And if you like challenge and you like to just like roll up your sleeves and get things done, it's a great place to be. It's a lot of fun. But the challenge is you can't accomplish nearly as much as you can when you're with a large organization. And the more we were able to scale, the more we've been able to accomplish, right? We wouldn't be able to do things like deliver MyGlue and Network Glue and a lot of the AI stuff they're doing, IT Glue Copilot, with a small team, right? We have 10, 15 developers. You can't do that kind of stuff, right? So being part of a large organization creates more administrative burden. You don't know everybody. Certainly you don't know them as intimately as you do when you're just, elbows to elbow with a small group of people. But the opportunity in front of us is so much greater, and the problems that we can solve for our community and for the industry are so much greater. So that's the other side of the thing, and it's a lot of fun. I'm enjoying what we're doing, and I think that we're still in the early days. I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to continue to deliver more to our customers and for us to live up to the mission of what we're really trying to accomplish and really driving technicians to be as efficient as possible.
It's interesting, Nadir. I speak to some entrepreneurs, and they clearly thrive on those scrappy early days. The chaos.
Yeah.
And then when they reach a point where the acquisition or something, and they've got the ability to take it to the next level, there's a lack of interest there, and they move on. They're sort of serial entrepreneurs. So you strike me as somebody, you want to see this taken to its sort of logical conclusion to the nth degree there. So you mentioned, expanding the Glue portfolio, MyGlue, Network Glue. Tell us a little bit more about those products.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. But I agree with what you said 100%. I've met many of those types of entrepreneurs who just don't have that interest in doing that. Yeah. For me, I always look at it as it's unfinished business if I leave too early. Right?
They're starters, not finishers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I want to take it to the end. So MyGlue and Network Glue. So MyGlue is a collaboration tool that we built for MSPs, leveraging IT Glue. So what it does is it provides a end user experience for MSP's clients to interact with the data that's in MyGlue. So if they need to collaborate with their MSP to either just consume documentation, to be able to use their own passwords and store them in there, to provide information to the MSP, say they want to update contacts or they want to upload asset information into the tool, they can do all of those types of things through MyGlue. It's a really nice way for MSPs to be able to get documentation from their customers without having to email spreadsheets around or chase them for information. Instead, it's like send them a task. They have a recurring checklist once a month to go update your contacts and let us know, if you need to delete anybody or change people's titles or phone numbers or that kind of basic stuff, right? And it gives them a way that they can consume their self-help, knowledge-based type information as well. So that's what MyGlue is about. And then Network Glue is about enhancing the automation that we have in IT Glue for creation of documentation. So we have about 100 integrations with third-party tools in IT Glue, primarily focused around creating documentation to remove the burden from the technician to have to do it. But there's limitations on what we can do automatically with third-party API integration. So we started to hit those barriers, and we wanted to do more. So we had to build our own discovery technology to be able to live on a network and be able to get the information that we need without being reliant on those third-party APIs. So we'll scan an environment and document everything that we find in there, which allows us to document really rich information that we wouldn't be able to do otherwise. Things like which devices are connected to which port on a switch. We can now augment our switch documentation with that kind of information. So it's good. We get really granular and really detailed. We can connect to Active Directory and pull out all the contacts from Active Directory, all the licensing information from Active Directory. We could document that in IT Glue, which is really nice. And because we're connected to Active Directory, now we can do password resets. So if you have a password that's an Active Directory password stored in IT Glue, you need to rotate it, you can hit a button and it'll automatically rotate. You want to set a schedule to have that happen automatically on a scheduled basis for service accounts and things like that, you can do that.
Very cool indeed. And I think any review of current technology without mentioning AI, artificial intelligence, it's like, what? Yeah. So talk to us about how AI is going to affect documentation. So we've got IT Glue Copilot. Yeah. I mean, we could talk an entire podcast just about the AI thing, but give us the potted sort of overview of how AI is going to help with the Glue experience.
AI is a really interesting topic right now. Yeah. In many ways, I kind of think of it as a bad word because I think that the whole technology world is so wrapped around the idea of AI that we've forgotten what's most important, which is to deliver value to the user of the technology. Whether it's a consumer app or a business-to-business app, at the end of the day, somebody's using this technology to get benefit from it, not to use some fancy technology. So it doesn't matter if some capability is delivered with AI or traditional algorithms or a person behind a computer pressing a button when you press a button type. Like it doesn't matter, like Mechanical Turk, right? None of that matters. The only thing that matters is what is the value that the person gets at the end of the day. So we take that lens for everything that we're doing. I don't care how we deliver it. I only care what we're going to deliver to our customers. Now, with that being said, there are some capabilities that we simply would not be able to build without AI today. Things that you can't do with algorithms, or things that you could just deliver much more easily with artificial intelligence than we could otherwise. And that's why we've invested in our AI technology to be able to deliver IT Glue Copilot so we can help improve the documentation experience and the value that our users get from using IT Glue. So we kind of break down IT Glue into a few different areas, or documentation to a few different areas, and we're leveraging AI in different aspects of those areas. So we look at how can we improve the creation of documentation? How do we improve the curation of documentation to make sure that the information system is relevant and up to date? How do we make documentation more accessible? And then how do we improve the orchestration of the lifecycle management of documentation? And IT Glue Copilot is looking at each of those different areas and providing capabilities that help users with all those different aspects of it.
So to that point, information overload is something that really occurs to me about the whole AI sort of age. You know, if we're going to be able to do something, where do you stop? You know, there's too much there. And I know MSPs specifically where they've implemented a tool like IT Glue, they've started doing documentation, and they do it to the nth degree, and happy days. But then that documentation becomes stale, it becomes outdated, you've got a conflict in info. So how do you see, you know, the AI revolution and Copilot for Glue helping with that stale information and the information overload generally?
Yeah, so IT Glue Copilot is going to provide a documentation health dashboard that's going to help organizations understand what is the current health of their documentation, so they can better curate the documentation and make sure that the information in the system is relevant, it's being well used, that there aren't duplicates in there. So the dashboard is coming out next month, and it will provide them with insights into which documentation is not being used, which documentation is being used but it's not useful, which documentation is duplicated. And we're not just looking at duplicated text. These documents have the same name. That's easy. This is actually looking at the intent of the documentation. Because if you write an SOP and I write an SOP to do the same thing a month later, we're going to use different words, right? So we actually can look past that and understand, okay, these documents are actually trying to accomplish the same thing, so therefore you should clean them up, right? You need to curate them, figure out which is the best one or merge them or whatever, right? And then what's the most useful documentation? We can also identify that. So using our current telemetry about how people are using IT Glue, our system can be very intelligent in understanding these different aspects of documentation and help provide an experience that can allow a user to curate their documentation to make sure that everything in the system is useful and up to date.
Yeah. Do you ever find yourself pinching yourself and going, I'm getting excited about documentation?
Very often.
It's a weird thing, isn't it? Because like I'm loving having the conversation with you and talking to it about the potential, but essentially it is just getting information out of your head and down into systems. It's a weird thing. Yeah.
I mean, obviously I'm very passionate about documentation. I've been living and breathing IT Glue now for almost 9 years. So this is quite frankly my life. So this is what it's all about.
Well, it's changed the industry. It really has. As I said, when I ran an MSP, I wish there was a tool like IT Glue around, because we would just scrabbled around with spreadsheets and Word documents and things like that. So let's have a look to the future. What can we expect from the Glue factory over the next 18 months or so?
So we're going to continue to invest in IT Glue Copilot. We've launched the first couple features. Some of them I didn't talk about. I just mentioned the documentation curation piece of it, but there's a whole bunch of other features around Copilot that we're going to be launching and investing in. We talked about a lot of them here at our event today. We are going to do another product update webinar probably in about 6 weeks where we'll kind of go through them again. show screenshots of where we are with them and everything. So if you want to get into the details of it, I would encourage all of your listeners to come check out our product update webinar where they can see it firsthand.
We'll include that in the show notes. Thank you.
Great. Yeah. Thank you. So yeah, we'll be continuing to invest in Copilot. We're going to invest in improving the offline mode experience for IT Glue. So offline mode is a feature of IT Glue that gives people the ability to cache their data inside of an IT Glue application on their own local site. So in the event that IT Glue is down, they can access their data. So that works right now for passwords only. We're going to be enhancing it to also have documents and configs and all the rest of the IT Glue data inside of offline mode. So that's an area that we're really excited about. It's an area that's a bit unfortunate that we have to invest in, but the reality is bad things happen. And as much as we invest in reducing the risk of those bad things and making sure that when we do have an incident, they're as short as possible, we also need to make sure that we're prepared to mitigate when there are. So we're investing in offline mode. So that's another big area. Integrations. We're going to continue to expand our portfolio of integrations and improve the existing integrations we have. So on the improving existing integrations, Microsoft is a big area of focus for ours. Getting things like the Intune security scores into IT Glue is an important area. Getting MFA status from the Microsoft tooling is important to us. You'll see those come into IT Glue. Expanding integrations, we're focused on the different networking kit providers. So we have Meraki, we have Datto Networking. We need to add Ubiquiti, Fortinet, Sophos, Aruba, all those different cloud-enabled providers where we can get that information from APIs. We're going to pull that into IT Glue. So that's what's going on the third-party integration side of the house. And then there's a whole plethora of nuts and bolts features that everybody's been asking for different aspects of IT Glue that we'll continue to work our way through and invest in. You'll see 50 or so of those come out throughout the year.
Yeah, it's an exciting time for documentation.
Yeah,
I could talk to you about it all day. I know. We can't do that though. So Nadir, it's been brilliant catching up with you, my friend.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Hey folks, Richard here. Thanks for listening today. I know you've got a ton of options for who you listen to nowadays, so I really appreciate your support. Do you have any feedback on this episode? Ideas for future guests? Tweet me at TubbBlog using the hashtag TubbTalk. I respond to every tweet and really appreciate your feedback.